Hi everyone, I am Lindsay, and I will be talking about the story of Claudette Colvin. I will be honest, I have never heard of her before. I had only ever heard of Rosa Parks' story and the impact she made on history, so hearing this was very eye-opening. Also a little sad because all my life I've only heard about Rosa Parks' story, and knowing that she wasn't the first one to actually do it makes me feel like I have been lied to. All major movements or big events are comprised of smaller events that happen too, but are overlooked and forgotten, and Claudette Colvin's story is one of those that was hidden away. She could have been the face for the civil rights movement. Claudette Colvin was born on September 5th, 1939, in Montgomery, Alabama. She grew up in a poor neighborhood and attended Booker T. Washington High School, which was at the time a segregated school. She was a good, hardworking student and earned A's in her classes. She liked that her teachers taught her about Black history. She learned all about women like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and an opera singer, Marian Anderson, and all these women inspired her. And on March 2nd, 1955, Colvin and her friends finished school and decided to take the bus to get home. During this time, white people sat in the front of the bus, and blacks had to sit towards the back of the bus. The bus driver had the authority to assign seats. All the seats on the bus had been taken, and there was a white passenger that boarded the bus and was standing in the aisleway between Colvin and her friends. The bus driver told them to all sit up and stand at the back of the bus so the white passenger could sit down. Colvin states, "He wanted me to give up my seat for a white person, and I would have done it for an elderly person, but this was a young white woman. 3 of the students had got up reluctantly, and I remained sitting next to the window." At the age of 15, Claudette refused to give up her seat for a white person. Now, even though there was a seat open on one side of the aisle for the woman to sit in, she could not sit there because the white people couldn't even share a row of seats with black people. Colvin told the bus driver she had paid her fare and it was her constitutional right to remain where she was seated. She said she had felt the hands of Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth pushing down on her to not get up from her seat. Then 2 policemen boarded the bus and manhandled Colvin off the bus. They put her in handcuffs and drove her away. And instead of taking her to a juvenile detention center where they should have, she was taken to an adult jail and locked away in a small cell. And 3 hours later, her mother and pastor came to bail her out. Now, we all know Rosa Parks. She worked as a seamstress in a local department store, and she was a secretary of the Montgomery chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP. She was quiet and very soft-spoken person, but she was very passionate about freedom. Claudette Colvin was the first person to be arrested for challenging Montgomery's bus segregation policies, and her story only made it to a couple local papers. However, only 9 months later, the same act of refusing to get up from a seat on a bus and getting arrested was done by Rosa Parks. And she willingly did it. Her story was known worldwide, and she had sparked a boycott of buses in Montgomery. Rosa Parks became the face of resistance to segregation because she was part of the civil rights movement with the NAACP. Claudette was overlooked as becoming the face of resistance because she was deemed too young, because she was only a teenager. She had too dark of skin, and Rosa Parks had lighter skin, and shortly after she became pregnant. The NAACP thought an unwed young woman who would attract too much negative attention to the public. Later, Colvin and 3 other women became a plaintiff in Browder v. Gailey, which challenged the laws that segregated buses. Rosa Parks stayed away from the lawsuits, seeing as to how she was just arrested recently. And on December 20th, 1956, the Supreme Court ordered the desegregation of buses. For me, it is hard to believe that this all happened before Rosa Parks. All my life I have been told that it was Rosa Parks who was the first woman to refuse to give up her seat, only to find out that she wasn't. And the bus she sat in sits at the Henry Ford Museum. And I can't tell you how many times I have went on field trips to go see it and how many times I've seen it. So knowing all of this changes the impact of Rosa Parks' story, at least for me, because she wasn't the first one to do so. Here are my sources, and thank you for watching.